you have some of those signals for specific accounts, how do you prioritize from there in an ABM motion, right? To make sure that sales effort and marketing effort, ends up in as much bang for the buck as possible.
So it's kind of a combination of things where it's the level of first party intent. So, one website hit is very different from, 5 different people hitting 5 different pages across a website in 1 week. You start to kind of see the scale of intent and, need to react proportionally.
I just hit start and we have a couple of folks who are already in. I see folks joining in. We'll just give it a couple of seconds or a couple of minutes so that we get enough people to get started, and then we can get this going. All right. Great. So while folks are joining, one of the things I always love to understand is where everybody's dialing in from, so we know, how far and wide we've been able to reach with our promos. So if you're already in, feel free to add in the chat where you're joining in from, which company you're part of, and your name. So I'll get it started, and I would love to hear from everybody who's already joined it. All right, great. So it's been a minute. So I'll quickly get this started. Welcome to Masters of Revenue, our virtual summit. We hosted an ops edition just before this, and we're kicking off the demand gen edition of Masters of Revenue in July. So I'm one of the co-founders at Revenue Hero. My name is Chara, and I'm tasked with the unenviable role of generating demand and running marketing at Revenue Hero. And one of the reasons I'm really excited about hosting Masters of Revenue is these days, if you log into LinkedIn, it's all your strategies are either already dead or dying. So one of the things that we wanted to do at Revenue Hero was bring together practitioners of different strategies in GTM orgs to talk about demand generation and pipeline creation and strategies that are well alive and kicking, so we all can take away something from these conversations and be optimistic about being part of go-to-market organizations. So on those lines, I'm really excited to kick off the Masters of Revenue session with Amanda. Amanda, I would love to hear from you and get an introduction about yourself and about Verifiable before we jump into the session.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me here today, Chara. It's exciting to be here. A little bit nervous that I'm the first one on the docket for the demand gen, so pressure's on. But I'll do my best to answer questions from the audience. So a little bit about me. I am originally from Canada. Grew up in Edmonton, Alberta. I currently reside in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I've been here for about 5 years. So if you hear a little bit of that Canadian accent, that's going to come through every once in a while. I started my career in photography, actually, and decided pretty quickly that I liked the marketing side of photography better than the photography itself. That kind of led me into working for SaaS startups. Around 2011, I started to work as a marketing generalist in really early stage SaaS startups. And then when I moved to the US, I decided that I wanted to move into slightly later stage companies. So as in Series B, that sounds a little crazy to people, and really focusing on the demand gen space. I've always really liked this space because of the intersection of technical and analytic and creative skills that you use in this space. Basically, like there are no boring days in demand gen, and I really like that part of the function. Which brings me to Verifiable. So, I mean, the companies I like to work for are usually companies in legacy spaces. that are innovating in some way. Basically real people solving real problems for other real people. And most of the products that I work for aren't particularly sexy. I guess they're not big social media platforms, but they do have strong product market fit in a lot of cases. So when Verifiable approached me about this role a little over a year ago, I was really excited because I saw, the strong product market fit in the healthcare organization. So, I mean, to get into more of what Verifiable does, I'll have to explain a little bit about healthcare credentialing to you. So, healthcare credentialing is the checking of credentials for medical providers of different types. So, doctors, dentists, nurses, therapists, basically anybody who's providing patient care they need to have their credentials verified. So traditionally, this is done through a pretty manual process where there are actually people that go to schools and board certifications and different governing bodies and access the credentials of that provider. Grab a PDF or a screenshot or something like that, bring that back to their organization, and put together what they call a credentialing packet. This is designed to keep patients safe. So, everybody who has access to medical care should be grateful that this process exists. But in a manual sense, it's not very efficient. It causes a lot of operational delays and delays, patient care and has implications on patient care quality. So Verifiable automates 97% of these verifications. So that's where you start to see that product market fit, where we are able to provide faster credentialing and more reliable as well. When you're taking out that manual data entry, it's a whole new level for these especially larger healthcare organizations and health plans, health insurance companies. So yeah, it's an exciting product in a legacy space. And yeah, it's been a really interesting adventure to grow this product.
That's great. So you've been in the demand gen space for more than a decade, right? Typically, like traditional or legacy products, and that's one of the reasons I'm really excited about this chat as well, right, Amanda? So we're mostly hearing from SaaS vendors selling to other SaaS vendors who probably making marketing better or sales better, right? When you are able to crack a traditional industry like this, like healthcare, you're probably doing something that everybody can learn from, which leads me to my next question, right? Like you mentioned, you operate in a legacy traditional industry with a good product market fit, but it also comes with its own challenges where you probably don't have as much concentration of your ICP in your usual suspects when it comes to demand gen channels, right? So how do you approach this, and how do you think about driving demand and pipeline for your audience?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I am sometimes jealous of people that are in, MarTech or, even parts of fintech and things like that, where they get to do these fun things and social channels, stuff like that. But in an industry like this, it really comes down to educating the market. So it's not like our market is, so much dinosaurs that they don't have LinkedIn accounts. They are on LinkedIn. A lot of the buyers that we're dealing with are administrators, they're leaders within healthcare organizations. They are spending most of their day behind a computer. And, while they might not pop into podcasts or webinars as often, they are, they still need to find solutions to problems. I think one of the biggest things that we're up against in this space is that a lot of our market is problem unaware, where they're like, we've always done it this way. Why would we change it? Everything works mostly okay. So a large part of our job is to educate that market on how they could be doing things better. And it's also important for us to meet our target audience where they're at. Yeah, a lot of our demand generation activities are built around that, and just like finding these people where they are, and helping to make them aware of new solutions in this space.
Got it. So it looks like folks who can take something away from this are even in the MarTech space, like people who built a brand new solution that doesn't yet exist in the market, or solving new problems where the audience isn't yet problem aware. So they might have learnings from your experience to know how to educate your audience first before advertising the product or talking about the product, right? So that leads me to ask, so what are some of the approaches that you've seen work for an audience like this, right? Demand gen for traditional industries, right? And what are some examples that you feel the martech folks or the typical demand gen folks from can learn from?
Yeah, it's an interesting way to look at it. I think, I'll start with owned properties. I think having a strong owned property, as in, a website, is the backbone of a lot of our strategies. Our market, they're gonna go to Google when they're looking for a new solution, or they're looking for a service provider, or things like that. They are going to go to these places and solution shop, basically, in the way that they understand the product and the space. So I think one of our strongest assets, and our strongest levers, is having a website that's very focused on education, on product information, and calling out benefits, and really speaking to the buyer that we want to bring into a sales process. So having people, find us through search engines, whether that's organic or paid, that's a really important function that happens at the top of the funnel. We also have to be careful not to push conversion too early, where I think a lot of the people in this space, and a lot of people in a lot of spaces these days, they're inundated with ads. And general marketing across the board. So we do run a fair bit of targeted advertising, but it's not designed to convert right off the bat. It's designed to continue that education and push the right target buyers towards the right content at the right time. So a lot of this is very segmented. It's very narrow. We know exactly who our ICP is. Healthcare is a big industry in the US, but it's also the problem that we're dealing with is a relatively narrow problem within the healthcare industry. And we need to find the buyers that are most interested in that space, right? So there are going to be people in the healthcare organizations that we don't want to talk to at all. They're not interested in what we're doing. But the ones that we do want to talk to, we need to make sure that we're reaching them with the right, solution focused messaging. We also need to make sure that we're reducing friction wherever possible. So a lot of these old models of lead generation, where you're putting up an ebook or a white paper, or you're doing content syndication to pull in a bunch of leads. That's a model that we kind of dabbled in a little bit, but it's a model that I've seen really die down in recent years, because people are very skeptical. They don't want to give out their email if they don't have to, and if they're not invested enough yet, they're not going to do that. So I'd say at this point, 95% of the content on our website and the content in our campaigns is ungated. And that's essential for us in the strategies that we're using for account-based marketing and for intent activation. We have really the only thing that we continue to gate at this point is webinars and live events and things like that. And that allows our market to go and educate themselves, and to learn about the product, and to learn about how we're different from different suppliers or different solutions. And we also see a lot of success from one-to-few, one-to-one activations. And we'll get into account-based marketing a little bit more. But when we're looking at things like trade shows, VIP events, gifting, things like that are a little bit higher touch, those types of activations have been really successful for us, and they are really successful largely because we know who our buyer is. So those things kind of hook together, where we're educating on one side, and then we're being human and being nice to people and building trust and relationship and things like that on the other side. And those two things kind of come together, and they're like, hey, these guys are good at this, and we like them. And that kind of sums up how we approach creating demand in some ways.
Yeah. So it makes sense, especially since you said you're approaching traditional market. So folks who aren't even aware of the problem, why would they give out their email addresses unless they see, they keep reading about a problem, see you everywhere, and then, like you mentioned, know that verifiable is the source to go to learn about this problem, and then eventually trust you enough to give out their email addresses. Right? So somehow sounds like the everything everywhere all at once movie marketing edition, where you just need to be wherever they are all the time, right? Be classy about it, and then win the trust. Right? So I know
Yes.
that you touched up. Yeah. So I know that you touched upon ABM just a little bit, and this might be recency bias, but ever since we put out the Masters of Revenue Demand Gen edition on the first episode, I seem to be seeing ABM everywhere in LinkedIn. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you're thinking about ABM and what it looks like today, because one of the things that you commonly see and hear about ABM is just sales, and there are so many different opinions from different marketers. So I would love to hear from you, someone who's running it successfully, how you approach it and what people can learn from running ABM strategies.
Yeah, for sure. I think ABM takes on a lot of different meanings, and I've heard it be referred to as account-based engagement, or ABX. Everybody's kind of trying to apply different terms to it, and everybody kind of does it differently. There is no really set rule book for how you do ABM. But when we're looking at how we activate a strategy around ABM, the first thing is making sure that we define that ICP really well, and that we know exactly like who those target accounts are and how we separate them into, say, like industry buckets. So one of the big splits that we have in our business is that we have provider organizations, so hospitals and health systems, dental offices, private clinics, things like that. And then on the other side, we have health plans. So insurance companies also need to credential providers that are coming into their networks, and they have different motivations for how they want to improve credentialing, or how they want to do credentialing. So we need to approach those two different groups differently. But within those buckets, there are different types of organizations that are at different stages of innovation, I guess you could say. So we need to go down to the persona level at that point, where we can see within some organizations, certain titles that indicate that they're interested in, growing the provider network quickly, or compliance titles that are interested in making sure that they're staying compliant and they're not getting fined for any kind of violations. So that's kind of the first step to launching a successful ABM program, is really understanding who these companies are, and who within the companies are your buyers. You need to know those personas well, and the jobs that they do day to day, and what they care about. We have been experimenting quite a bit with intent data as well. So we kind of layer that intent data on top of that ICP and persona data, to look at how people are shopping for solutions like ours, or how they understand them. And that kind of takes us back a little bit to the crawl, walk, run approach to educating people about a new way to approach this space. Because a lot of them will think of our space as being, primarily outsourced. So there are a lot of companies that provide services for credentialing, or even individuals that will go and do that manual labor. They will go and verify those credentials, and pull those PDFs out, and turn them into a packet. And we approach this problem from more of a tech first kind of solution, where we're looking at how we get that data from the back end and pull it into one place. So a lot of our customers are actually on Salesforce as a front end and as a data repository. So we're pulling that data directly into their Salesforce instance, and it allows them to have that data in one place and share it throughout departments in the company, and that's a huge benefit. So, we have to understand what problem they're trying to solve, what kind of stage they're at, who's on the buying committee, all that kind of different stuff. And that influences how they go and shop for these services or products. And that's what guides us to how we create our campaigns, our content, our segments, things like that. So that allows us to create pretty detailed, targeted segments. We've also been experimenting with something that we're internally calling micro campaigns. And my team laughs at me. They're like, "You just made that up." And I'm like, "It's just like we're tagging it with a name." So we're calling these micro campaigns. They're basically integrated marketing campaigns that are targeted at a very specific segment, that is, industry, persona, and intent data. So like what they're searching for, what they're shopping for, activities they're taking on the internet. And guiding them through a journey that specifically addresses the problem that they're looking to solve. And different accounts might be in, 2 to 3 different micro campaigns at one time. So they're seeing campaigns and content on one problem as well as this problem as well as this problem, and they kind of overlap. And they're, this title, it will be more interested in this, but then this title within the buying community is going to be more interested in this topic. So understanding all these things has allowed us to create, really nimble campaign strategy, and really reduce wastage when we're buying advertising, and really improve our conversion rates at the top of the funnel. I hope that answers that
Awesome.
question. I feel like these answers could go on for a very long time, but
Hey, ABM is complex, so I think it needs to be detailed. So just to quickly summarize, really segment your audience, right? Understand where they buy and how they buy, understand their behaviors, and try to bring all of this together in micro campaigns where you make sure that you keep serving them relevant information, but don't restrict it to just one campaign, because you never know what stage of buying they're at, right? Did I butcher it, or?
No, not at all. And I think that, we do have some indicators of what buy-in stage they're in and what they're interested in based off of that
Mhm.
third-party intent. And that kind of is what puts them into a certain segment and targeted by a certain campaign.
Got it.
But the same person or the same account can be searching for 3 different things at the same time, right? But we want to be really solution focused in what we're showing them based on what they're looking for.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. So seems like a lot of thought goes into the way you define your ICPs, right? Try to understand where they're buying, how they're buying, and what they might be interested in, which always gets me thinking, how do you make sure that all the effort that marketing puts into all of this translates? I'm sorry about that. Of course, that happens. So how do you make sure that all of this translates into meaningful outcomes with the sales team, in terms of how you align with the sales team to make sure that they have all of this information when they're reaching out to these accounts, right? So I think what I'm getting at is, how do you ensure sales and marketing alignment, especially given such a complex ABM motion that you're setting up?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, sales and marketing and alignment in ABM and in revenue generation in general can be make or break.
Mhm.
And I know it's a sore spot for a lot of demand marketers, a lot of people that are being, asked to create more MQLs and, just generate more leads, get more pipeline kind of thing. It is very much it needs to be a team effort. And that kind of starts from the top down, where leadership of these teams needs to be aligned when it comes to the strategy for how we're going to create pipeline. Um, and that relates to strategy as well as goals. And I think one of the things that kills a lot of teams, or causes division between these teams, is when the goals are set in such a way that it creates competition between the two functions. Um, if you think of marketing and sales as 2 different stages within the same funnel or the same process, versus looking at them as like 2 different lead generation or opportunity generation functions, then you can create a cohesive strategy to make sure that account-based marketing is successful. And in general, you're pushing people through efficiently, and getting them to the right place. So first thing, like I said, is goals, making sure that the goals are set correctly. So we're looking at marketing goals. Setting MQL goals for an ABM function is misguided in a lot of cases. So sometimes these accounts are going to come through, they're going to do that education, they're going to be motivated enough to come and fill out a demo form. And we're always pleased when they do that. Often those accounts close pretty quickly. But there are limitations, generally that skews towards the, lower end of mid-market or kind of the mid-market space. But as you head up into enterprise, you've got more people involved in the buying decision. It's less likely that somebody's going to come in and fill out a form. They're going to want to, interact with somebody one-to-one. So we're dealing with this by having a pretty cohesive motion with the business development team over on the sales side, and making sure that we are aligned in what segment we're approaching, what messaging we're approaching them with, what solution we're focusing on, and making sure that that team is prepared to have those conversations. And we kind of have a variety of different playbooks that we use to make sure that we are being aligned as two different functions that are working towards the same goal. So, in a lot of cases, marketing at the top of the funnel is influencing these accounts. We've got this target account list based off of ICP and persona and intent data. And we're feeding them campaigns and content and, nurturing them and getting them educated. And when they show a certain level of intent, that's when we start bringing in the BDR team, and they start outbounding one-to-one with the right contacts within that company. And we can kind of see who those contacts are based on the content that they're consuming further up the funnel. So the first party intent data becomes very important in that process, that we know within these target accounts, what content they're looking at. We can't match exactly the contact to the content in a lot of cases. That's kind of, there's privacy stuff around there, and there are some new apps that are coming out that say they can do that, but it's still kind of a fuzzy gray area. But in a lot of ways, we can look at the success of the campaign and who's engaged with ads and who's clicked through or view through on these campaigns or engaged with certain pieces of content, and kind of extrapolate from there and figure out which contacts the BDR should be reaching out to. So these things kind of happen in tandem, where we don't stop marketing to that account, because we always want to continue to bring in more stakeholders and more support for the product. We also have pretty strong playbooks around events. So events have been a pretty big part of our strategy this year, because we have such a targeted industry, and there are a lot of events within healthcare. I think we're at about 10 events this year that we've done or planned, which is a decent amount. I think we did 2 last year, 2 or 3. So we're ramping up that side pretty quickly, and we have a pretty strong playbook going into that, where we actually put account and contact lists from events into campaigns, at least a couple of weeks before the event, and then we also have like one-to-one outreach for those contacts and accounts, so that when they get to the event, they already know who we are. They at least have some understanding of what we do. And they're more willing to have a conversation, and that gives us a good opportunity to kind of build that trust with those people. But yeah, when it comes down to it, it really comes down to, like I said, the goals, making sure that marketing is measured on influence and not MQL generation. Like you're gonna kill an ABM motion by measuring it by MQL generation. But our demand gen motion influences over 70% of the leads or the opportunities that come through the funnel, regardless of how they're closed. So it's really important for us to get those nurtured, and then pass them over to the BR team when they're showing enough intent to be interested in a sales cycle. And then it's way easier for the BDR team to go in there and close those opportunities. So that's a lot of how that functions.
Yeah, sounds like it looks like ABM is just going after a set of accounts from the outside, but then the amount of alignment, the amount of communication involved is extremely intense. So while you were going through that, I figured out the alignment between my camera and my MacBook. It just had a tumble there. So given everything that you just spoke about, Amanda, how you make sure that you communicate your goals for your ABM campaigns upfront, make sure that it's not an MQL goal, because we keep hearing this over and over again, right? Like marketers get MQL goals from founders and their execs, and they give into it, and then they just start driving leads, and then sales comes back saying, hey, you're getting me so much junk, I don't know what to do with it. So it's great that you track your ABM campaign success based off of influence, and you're able to deliver the right set of accounts to BDR so that they're successful across different touch points, right? Whether it's outbound events, and would love to hear about all the logistical nightmares that you had to solve for to go from 2 events last year to like 10 to 11 this year down the line. But one of the things that got me thinking was, given all of this, I myself am also curious about your tech stack, right? Like, how do you manage all of this at Verifiable? What products? Because when it comes to ABM, it's very easy to hate a lot of the products that you use out there, but it's also always good to hear about using those products effectively to run effective ABM campaigns. So, what does your tech stack look like, and what works well for you?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like this is one of the advantages of moving a little bit further up market, moving into a Series B company that is going after enterprise accounts versus being at a seed rounds or Series A or bootstrap company. And that I can get into a little bit if you want to learn a little bit about hacking early ABM approach. But yeah, the tool set is pretty important to this approach. And I'd say when we look at our stack, we're using Salesforce as our central source of truth when it comes to account status, account lists, things like that. So that's kind of where that lives, where we can see data on past deals, whether won or lost, things like that. So that kind of becomes a central source of truth. And then we layer on top of that as our intent provider, as well as our sales intelligence tool. We're using 6sense for that. So I used 6sense at my previous company as well, and it is one of the better, I would say, companies in the market when it comes to third-party intent data. So we're using that for third-party intent data as well as first-party intent data. So engagement with our website, engagement with our ad campaigns, all of that kind of stuff. So that's a really important tool for us. We also use it to report on account engagement in a lot of places. So we're able to see engagement with 6sense display ads, which is a big function of the platform that we use to get super targeted about where our ads are being shown, as well as LinkedIn ads and platforms like that. So it kind of serves a few different functions where we've got the third party intent, looking at the intent in the market of these target accounts within ICP. We've got first party intent when they hit the website or they're engaging with ad campaigns. And then we've got reporting on the back end to look at engagement with our overall campaigns and content. We're also using for inbound and workflows and things like that. We use HubSpot on the marketing automation side of things. So people, coming into certain campaigns are being pushed into nurtures. And, if they come in inbound, we're pushing them through to Salesforce. And that kind of becomes that's kind of the trio of our primary stack. Obviously, we've got Revenue Hero implemented on the inbound form fill, so we get those leads routed as fast as possible. And I know I've talked to our CS rep over there a couple of times about this, but we went from routing inbound leads taking like 20 days to get from a form fill to an opportunity down to 20 hours. So we have little delays here and there when people don't book off of that initial form fill, but for the most part, we're getting people into that opportunity stage and into those first discovery calls way faster. So if they do come in through inbound, we're making sure that we're not dropping the ball there, and that's been pretty huge for us on the inbound opportunity generation. But we're also using it on the campaign side as well. So adding those links into that one-to-one outreach and making sure that people can book into meetings right away. So that's kind of the marketing stack that's primary, I guess. We've got all of our ad channels and things like that as well. But wondering if you have any follow-up questions on that.
Oh no, I'm just listing it down to the audience. So how do you weave all of this together? Are you able to get data in and out of all of these platforms just with their native integrations, or do you rely on like is the 6sense take care of all of it? Is there a Zapier or a metadata? Like who takes care of all the orchestration magic?
Yeah, so I mean, we've been working pretty heavily with revenue operations lately to look at how we're like which data we're pushing into Salesforce as that single source of truth, basically.
Mhm.
We do use segmentation in 6sense a fair bit to push that data over. So if an account has interacted with a certain set of content, or has interacted with an ad campaign, or shown a certain level of third-party intent, we're assigning segmentation to them and pushing that segmentation over to Salesforce, and that
Mhm.
allows us to flag via workflows to the BDR team where this account has taken this action. It's time to reach out to them. So
Got it.
that I feel like is one of the biggest gaps that you could experience with this intent data. If you are not actioning on it in a very like systematic way, you would easily miss those signals. So we've built these systems surrounding segmentation to make sure that BDR team can get on those leads right away. And first party intent flags account for like 50 to 60% of the opportunities that team generates. It's been huge for their opportunity generation, and for us overall as a go-to-market function. But that wouldn't happen if they weren't bought into that idea. So I think part of it is showing these early successes that this first party intent flagging that does really matter. It shows that somebody is researching, that they're in a buying phase, and that we need to get them into a sales process as soon as possible, so that we're considered on the table when they're looking at different service providers. Yeah, so that's definitely one of the biggest things there.
Got it. So it sounds like just the stack that you have right there with 6sense segmentation works well enough to send data to Salesforce. You don't necessarily need like one more workflow orchestration product, at least yet.
Well, and we are digging further into attribution when it comes down to channels and
Mhm.
individual campaign touches and stuff like that. So a lot of that stuff right now is manually exported from 6sense. We're looking at Google Analytics. We're looking at HubSpot, where we have available data
Mhm.
to look at the success of individual campaigns, as well as individual channels. So that's more of an internal marketing thing to make sure that we're putting our time and the money in the right strategies in the right channels,
Mhm.
and the right content. So that's definitely, we kind of smashed that all together. We've been looking at potential tools to advance that a little bit further, but I think a lot of that comes down to like how you're modeling attribution and influence, right? So I think that's the stage that we're in right now, is looking at which touches really matter.
Got it.
And within a micro campaign journey, and somebody's hitting middle of funnel, what matter, like what should we do, what should we do next? And looking at historical data and making sure that we're pushing them to the right thing after that.
Mhm.
So a lot of that data, we're kind of mashing together manually right now. I know it's not fantastic, but it's just kind of one of those things where it's like one thing at a time, right? We'll continue to layer on and to build better attribution models for those channels and campaigns.
Yeah, makes sense. And I've got to give a shout out to Hockey Stack. We just recently implemented Hockey Stack, of course, at a different scale and a different size of company. But it's like magic being able to visualize, which touch points influence conversions. So maybe one of the vendors who could help out there, right? And before I jump on to the next question, I love it when this happens. When we sent out the emails for this event, we had a question from Ian, who wanted specifically to understand strategies and tactics for launching an ABM type of campaign to 10,000 accounts with $50,000 a month, right? So very specific in terms of the goal. So how should it be structured? What channels should be used? And what's the time until which you should wait to see results? And the goal here is to generate pipeline that ultimately closes within Q4, but shows early signs of working in Q3. Right? I love it's an extremely specific question, right? With very specific parameters. So would love to hear your take on it, so the broader audience can also benefit from it.
Yeah, I kind of love when questions are structured this way because it's like, please help me win in the next 2 quarters, kind of thing.
Exactly.
So I'll try and get to the where I'm seeing flaws or how I would optimize that set of parameters basically. So I think the first thing is 10,000 accounts for an ABM approach is too many accounts to start with, especially looking at the budget that we have here.
Mhm.
I think in order to be successful with an ABM structure, you need to narrow that down to really like what's best fit ICP. So when we're looking at our ABM structures, we're really only targeting 1,000 to 2,000 accounts at any given time. We have broader, more organic or paid search kind of ongoing campaigns that are meant to catch stuff that's outside of there where people are looking to buy a solution. We kind of capture that intent at the bottom of the funnel. But when we're looking to engage and nurture a target list of accounts, we need to get way more narrow because you want to be hitting those accounts from all sides. You want to be hitting all of the buyers that are within those accounts that are going to care about the product, and that means that you need to narrow your list a fair bit. There are ways that, at about 50 grand a month, it's a respectable budget to get like a mini ABM strategy off the ground. Tooling is probably going to be the hardest part. So if intent data or ABM platform is not within the budget, you can kind of shift your thinking to a more manual process to build target account lists. And this is something that we do internally as well. Like we get target account lists from Salesforce in some ways as a Salesforce App Exchange partner. They kind of feed us. They're like, oh, this is the Health Cloud list of companies, and we kind of cherry pick through that and look for the best ICP fit.
Mhm.
Or we look at industry directories and things like that, where we can start to cherry pick accounts from there and start to pull those into the CRM and create target account lists that have been heavily vetted as being high fit ICP. Um, so that's one way that you can kind of get around, having to have a proper ABM tool when it comes to targeting them. So when we started to launch, a mini ABM motion at Verifiable before we had 6sense, we were doing that manual account creation or account list creation. We were doing a lot of title and job function targeting on LinkedIn, using those lists, as well as matching contact data into Google Ads to do demand gen campaigns. So a bunch of different places that you can do display ads to build up that influence and build up the awareness and get people into your own property. But once they're on your own property, once they're on your website, like how do you follow up on them? So I think the biggest thing that I would push on for tooling at the beginning of testing out a strategy like this is a first party intent provider. So the first party intent provider that we had when I first started is called Koala.
Mhm.
So this product looks specifically at target accounts within a certain space where you can set criteria on size of company and industry and revenue and things like that, and have them flag when they hit your website or hit certain pieces of content. So that was really helpful for us to kind of like do that manual list build, get it into a few platforms. It kind of helped us study the persona within or the personas within these accounts to build better, ongoing campaigns in organic and paid search and things like that. And then once those accounts were fed into the website, we had that first party intent flag to the BDR team so they could start that outreach. And that was kind of the first version of our account-based marketing approach. And if it's something that people want to start testing, it's an approach that I would encourage before buying tools that are 6 figures or more in some cases. The only other thing I'd say around this is just to really understand the persona that you're going after within these accounts. You want to narrow that list to 1,000, 2,000 accounts, and then you want to know exactly who the buying committee is within those accounts, and create your campaigns in such a way that they are targeting those job functions with the right solution messaging that's going to speak to those people.
Got it. I think the other two questions, which is as a founder, always the questions I'm asking my team is also what time until we expect results, right? Need to generate pipeline in Q4. Is that the right approach to ABM? How should we thinking? How should we be thinking about it?
It really depends on what like kind of stage you're coming from. If your website is in a good shape, you've got a lot of content to draw and you're not creating a lot of new stuff, you're just kind of like reworking it into campaigns that make sense to approach a target account list, and you're building that playbook or that process to get it to the right people, then you're going to see results a lot faster, where you can start seeing results within days, and bringing in that first party intent and then acting on that first party intent. You can start to see opportunities come in from days to weeks of launching a campaign like that. If you look at your set of content, your website, your existing ads and things like that, and you realize that, oh, you know what, we're not speaking to the right buyer, we're not speaking to the buying committee properly, it's going to take you a little longer to get there, and it's probably going to be a full quarter of build and making sure that you're creating campaigns that are speaking to the right persona within these target accounts. So it really depends on what your current situation is.
Got it. So essentially, cracking the first few pieces that you mentioned, right? Narrow the ICP. 10K is probably too broad an audience to go after with an ABM strategy. Build a target account list. If you're not able to purchase one of the established ABM vendors out there, then look at directories and other vetted audiences, right? Target using job functions and titles, and then start analyzing your first party intent data on your website and all your different assets. And from there, I think you'll start understanding when you might see results. It's not all black and white to say, hey, this is the exact strategy that leads to results in Q3 or Q4, right? So would you say that
It's
that's,
a
yeah,
little bit.
sorry, go
It's
on.
going to depend a little bit on what average account value you're looking for as well. Whether somebody's investing $2,000 in your product versus $30,000 in your product, or $150,000 in your product, that's going to change your sales cycle. So it's kind of a difficult question to answer, because even within our cycle, for a mid-market account, less touch points are needed. The sales cycle closes a lot faster versus our biggest accounts closed. They can take from 6 months to a year, or potentially more to get to that closed one stage. But it's worth it, because you're bringing in that much more revenue versus the smaller accounts that close faster. But we like to have a good mix. So when you're looking at your strategy, there are going to be some there's going to be some lower hanging fruit, right? Smaller contracts that you can go at higher volume, versus these larger contracts that you're going at more narrow targeting, to bring in those larger accounts.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. So Amanda, would you say, so earlier in our conversation, you said you have some tips for hacking ABM at earlier stage companies. Would you say that covers most of it? Is there anything else that folks like us can think about?
Yeah, I think that covers a lot of it from a digital perspective. I do want to reiterate that events can be really useful for this, as long as you're running a good playbook around them. Thankfully, a lot of events, when you're sponsoring, even if you're sponsoring at the lowest level, you've got a kiosk or something like that, they're going to send you attendee lists, and you need to make sure that those attendee lists are brand and solution aware before you get to those events. But it can be a good way to build up a contact list, basically a list of target accounts, an email database, things like that. So that's another kind of hack in the background there. But yeah, initially, if you know who your ICP is, and you can kind of define them by industry and size and revenue and things like that, you like, that's your first layer, and then you layer on top of that kind of what stage of company they're at. Do they have the buying mindset to buy our product right now? Do they have who's the person or the buying committee within this company that would be logical to approach? And those things can all be done, looking at open information, basically, looking at directories, looking at event attendee lists, and comparing that to contacts in LinkedIn and places like that. It's not super fast or easy, but it's something, in earlier stage companies that I worked with, earlier on in my SaaS marketing career, we did things like this, and that kind of strategy worked well for us. Executing direct mail in conjunction with LinkedIn ads and things like that. Kind of surrounding this small list of contact of accounts, and making sure that they see us.
Got it. So I think on top of everything that you just mentioned, don't sleep on events if you're in early stage, right? Use those audience lists, run LinkedIn ads, direct mail also works well, right? So taking a step back, Amanda, one of the things that you mentioned in ABM strategies is it's all dependent on the first party signals that you eventually get once your ABM campaign has been running for a while and your ICP audiences start interacting with your different marketing assets. So let's say that you have some of those signals for specific accounts. How do you prioritize from there in an ABM motion, right? To make sure that sales effort and marketing effort, ends up in as much bang for the buck as possible.
So it's kind of a combination of things where it's the level of first party intent. So, one website hit is very different from, 5 different people hitting 5 different pages across a website in 1 week. You start to kind of see the scale of intent, and, need to react proportionally, I guess. So, in the earlier stages where we've got, 1 or 2 website hits, we're going to put those guys into more of like a retargeting approach, where we are starting we're continuing to educate them with the kind of content and the campaigns that we're hitting them with. And if they're a really good ICP fit, we're also going to feed them into a one-to-one approach, and a one-to-a-few approach, starting to invite to VIP events or webinars and things like that. So, if they're starting to show awareness, or they're at the beginning of their buying stage, but they're a really good fit, you need to get on that as soon as possible. It also depends on the size of company, right? Like bigger companies are going to have more structured budgeting cycles and RFP process and things like that. So, in a lot of those bigger accounts, it's important to get in earlier, and to approach them in any way you can. So that's kind of a priority where, if a larger account that's perfect for us starts to show intent, even if it's the smallest bit of an intent, we get on that right away. Versus if we're looking at, the more volume-based conversions, we're looking at mid-market, the smaller accounts. We're going to trigger that first-party intent when they've shown a little bit more intent, because their buying cycle is going to be shorter. So it's generally going to be a little bit more aggressive in how we reach out to them, once they've hit that certain level of first party intent, and they're looking at like 3 of our product marketing pages, and they've hit the get demo page but haven't filled out the form. Those ones are usually pretty easy to get into a sales process by outbounding at that point.
Got it. So like everything else, it's a combination of different factors, like cluster together all the information you have in terms of first party data, check if they're an ICP, if the person who's hitting these assets is somebody who can buy, and then based on that prioritize, bucket them into different strategies, right? Invite them to an event or try outbounding them if they're perfect fit ICP and have probably lingered on your pricing page and you requested a demo page for 30 minutes, right? Awesome.
We also kind of study we do study the inbound flow as well, and look at kind of a reverse goal path. So companies that have converted, coming inbound, we look at the touch points that they have gone through to get to that point, and kind of reverse engineer. So if we see that happening with an account and it doesn't convert inbound, we know that that level of intent is there. For some reason, they haven't filled out that form, and we need to go and figure out why and how we overcome that. So that's a data point that we look at as well.
Awesome. So reverse engineer your inbound patterns. And do you start targeting specific accounts to optimize for those patterns as well, Amanda? Or is it mostly just observing folks who've been through the pattern but not converted?
No, we definitely do. And that's kind of where the retargeting comes into it. It's part of the segmentation as well, where we study those reverse goal paths to help us inform the segments and the campaign journeys that we're creating, where it's like, okay, this campaign journey is typical for somebody in this industry to experience on the way to inbound conversion. We're going to reverse engineer that and turn that into an ABM campaign where the journey kind of copies that, emulates that, and then put people that show that original intent into that campaign to guide that journey.
Makes sense. Awesome. So we're about 6 minutes away. So one of the things I also always ask when we're discussing ABM, Amanda, is who would you say ABM is for, right? I'm an early stage, not yet Series B founder, right, with a not so high ACV and short sales cycles as of today. I'm sure we have folks listening in with different ACVs, different sales cycles across the board, right? Is it something that you can pointedly say, right? In sense, if you have at least 20K ACV with like a 1 month sales cycle, ABM is for you. Anything lesser is not for you. What's your take on that?
I honestly think that any company that's B2B can execute some level of account-based marketing. So we've kind of talked through the manual hacking of it, in early stage companies where you're looking at directory lists and you're being very, I don't know, guerrilla about it, I guess. That to me is still some level of account-based marketing. When you're looking at scaling intent-based marketing or account-based marketing, which is basically what we're doing at Verifiable right now, you're looking at layers of, one to many and one to few and one to one. And that takes, a little bit more resources. You want your ACV to be a little bit higher, or yeah, that's basically the defining factor there. If you're going to really scale up ABM, you need to make sure that it is the ROI on it is good. So it definitely is for us, and it's helped us to push up market and make sure that we're getting in front of these bigger accounts. And I think there are very few B2B companies that don't want to push up market in some way. There's some people that are playing a volume game and they're like, we're good with, $50 subscription fee every month kind of thing. If that's your approach, then ABM probably isn't for you. You're playing a volume game. You're looking at capturing intent. If you're looking to really create intent and to head up market and to, continually increase your ACV, then, starting small and scaling that function is a good move.
Makes sense. Would you say that the scaling of like folks who are looking to scale their ACVs and going up market, being a better fit for ABM beyond the guerrilla ABM strategies, is that a function of the fact that ABM tooling out there is extremely, I would say, pricey, or is it just more of the entire strategy and the amount of time involved as well?
It's a combination of the two. I think, ABM platforms are a little bit pricey because they have a lot of data that we need to access in order to execute a good ABM strategy and a good, intent data activities. So it's kind of a combination of the two.
All right, makes sense. Good. I think we're in the last few minutes. We do have a question from the audience. Let me quickly put that on stage. So, how frequently do you review and refine your ABM strategy? Or is that even something that's time based, or is it more based on signals?
Yeah, I think when we're looking like at our process, our playbooks and things like that we're standardizing a little bit more. We're kind of tweaking on a quarterly basis. But we're also looking at campaign engagement and from a theme perspective, from a messaging perspective, what's performing, what's not performing on a monthly basis right now. Where if something doesn't start to pick up steam basically within a first month of its running, we'll shut it down. Or a lot of our campaigns as we're starting to pick them up, in the first month or two, we'll show 30 to 50% increases in account engagement off of a target segment. So that's a sign that we continue to run those until that kind of dies off. The thing you really want to avoid is like anything getting stale, I guess, because you're often targeting the same list of accounts over and over and over again. And if they're seeing the same ads for months on end, they're gonna check out in a lot of cases. If they haven't converted, if they haven't moved through the process by that point, you need to show them something new. You need to figure out what the next thing is that's gonna hook them. So when it comes to themes and messaging and things like that, we're setting overall umbrella themes probably on a quarterly basis, but looking, and measuring on a monthly basis to make sure that we're keeping things fresh.
So we're just a couple of minutes away. So I also always end this with, where can people find you, and what are your go-to resources when it comes to ABM, so folks can check all of those out after the session.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm on LinkedIn. You can go and search for me on LinkedIn. I don't have my link ready right now. Or you can find me at amanda.poetker@verifiable.com. When it comes to learning, there are a few sources right now. B2B Revenue Vitals as a podcast, and I think his name is Chris Walker, has been a good thought leader in that space. Other than that, Hockey Stack has actually been a really big one for me as well. Looking at Hockey Stack Labs lately has gotten my attention. Looking at the way they're compiling data there, especially from like a channel performance perspective, I've found those really helpful.
Got it. All right, Amanda, this was really great. I learned a thing or two. I'm going to try out some of those early stage ABM guerrilla tactics to see if it works out at Revenue Hero. Thank you so much for taking time to do this. And thanks everyone for dialing in.
Thank you. It's been fun.
All right. Yeah, likewise. See ya.